Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Yumi Sakugawa and MariNaomi.
Hi. Oh my God. Thank you so much for coming out when it's like practically raining in Los Angeles. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to read a little bit from my new book. It's my third book, but it's my first hardcover ever, and I'm very, very excited about it. And it's also the first long-form book, like not a bunch of short stories that I've ever done. And so so it's kind of a big deal for me. So I'm going to read a little from the book, and then my dear friend Yumi, who is such a superstar, she's going to come up and we're going to talk about being Asian and about making comics, and then we're going to do a little Q&A. So if at any point you're thinking like, I wonder what she means by that, save that question in your head and we'll do a Q&A. And then afterwards, I believe we'll both be sending our books, and I also have avocados from my tree. They're organic. If anyone wants them, I have 2 huge bags, and I brought little bags so that you can ripen them in the little bags. If you throw an apple in, it ripens even faster. So we'll have that up at the signing table, and there's more than enough for all of you. Maybe I should. Can anybody not see the screen from here? Okay, you're good. Okay. So, my book, Turning Japanese, it's published by this small press called 2D Cloud, and it's a comics memoir about trying to find my cultural identity as a mixed-race person by working at hostess bars in Tokyo and San Jose. Because when I was 22, I thought that would be the greatest way to connect with my culture. La la la. If you're not familiar with the concept, a hostess bar is where hostesses, usually women, almost always women, will keep you company while you drink. They're kind of like bartenders. Only they take more of an effort to be social with the patrons. Like they sing karaoke, they participate in the revelry. They're just like really involved, friendly versions of bartenders as we know them. And their primary role is to encourage someone to drink, but you get charged for your time with them in addition to what you're drinking. So at a typical Asian hostess bar, in addition to paying for your drinks, you also pay a table fee for their time. There are host bars in Japan too, but they're not as common, where you're accompanied by men. I've never been to one, but I wouldn't mind going just to see what the difference is. So a little about my background is I grew up in a super white town called Mill Valley, which is sort of a suburb of San Francisco. And there I didn't get a lot of opportunity to meet a lot of Asian people. Like my mom and my sister were pretty much it. Except for when we go to Japan, and then my family were also Asian, obviously, but then I didn't speak the language, so I couldn't really communicate with them. When I moved to San Jose in the 90s, I was kind of blown away that there was a Japanese community there. Most of them were expats in the tech community industry. Before long, I found out about a job opening at a hostess bar, which I knew about in Japan, but I didn't realize that they had them in the States. In fact, my aunt used to own one, so I'd been to hers. It seemed like a really good opportunity to not only make some money, but to learn Japanese and to connect with the Japanese culture, which had eluded me for so long because my mom really never wanted to get into that with me. So I intended to work at the Yamamoto bar, not the real name, long enough to grasp the language, and that's so I could travel to Japan and speak to my mom's side of the family without a translator/editor/censor for the first time in my life. So this book is about that journey. And this reading is going to focus on the first bar that I worked at, which was in San Jose, California. So, Yamamoto Bar was actually a restaurant and a bar. The bar was connected to the restaurant, but you could only get there if you knew that you were supposed to pass through the mysterious velvet purple curtains on the way to the restrooms. It was a totally illegal operation. On a typical day, 6 or so hostesses came in around 8 o'clock. We sat together in the waiting room, which was also used as a karaoke booth for large parties. We'd gossip, we'd get ready, or we'd just watch the karaoke videos until the customers started filtering in. Usually there'd be 1 or 2 regulars at first. The bulk of the clients came in after dinner time. Our manager, Nakasan, not his real name, assigned hostesses to the table. If a Japanese-only speaking client came in, he'd place a Japanese girl with them. If the client spoke English, then they'd get an American, usually, unless they requested a Japanese girl. A few of the hostesses had regular clients that they developed relationships with over time. The regulars would be seated with their favorite hostesses. However, at times, a hostess would have multiple regulars show up at the same time. When that happened, Nakasan would seat the girl with the most generous or well-to-do client, and the other men would have to wait their turn, often in the presence of a hostess whom they found less than desirable, and this was no fun for anybody. If a table started looking awkward, Nakasan would move the hostesses around, trying to get a better fit. Or if a more rich guy came in, then he'd also move them around. Head turn. Go to table 3. Excuse me, I say in Japanese. One of the few things I could say in Japanese. May I join you? She says. Clients would order sushi from the restaurant next door. Sometimes they'd even share. Once, I came in hungry, so I was relieved when the men at my table ordered a giant platter that they didn't seem to be touching. Do you mind if I have a piece? I asked him. Sure, no problem, he said. I kept an eye on Nakasan, worried that eating on the job might be frowned upon. I popped a sushi into my mouth, but when I looked down at the platter, I noticed something very odd. Where did that big lump of wasabi go? Oh my God, it must be in my mouth. Spitter swallow, spitter swallow. Gulp. This is not an analogy, by the way, this actually happened. Within moments, I had what can only be described as an adrenaline rush. I did my best not to burp anything up. And after that incident, I never had any problems eating wasabi again, actually until the other day, but we'll talk about that later. It was almost as if I'd been injected with wasabi antibodies, and now I was immune to its spiciness. In fact, Yumi was there the other day when I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to have the wasabi burn. As a hostess, I was expected to drink with the customers. Please drink more, he says. Well, if I must. Keep the glasses full. Light cigarettes. And Sue Ann says, I hate cigarettes. It's the worst part of the job, all the smoke. Politely make conversation. Flirting was greatly encouraged. I say, your job sounds very important. Ah, no, ha 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 ha, he says. Sing karaoke, albeit badly. It was a great tactic for getting out of a dull conversation. Here I am singing Blondie, not in key. Slow dance with the customers, although this was optional. And here Joan is saying, you give me $20 for this dance, okay? It's not actually okay. That was part of the job. We made $9 an hour, which was kind of a lot back then in the 90s, plus tips. We weren't supposed to take tips from the customers directly, and if money was handed to us, we're supposed to give it to Nakasan, who would divvy up the tips equally at the end of the night, no doubt taking a cut for himself as well. This is totally illegal, by the way. Still, some of the gals kept their tips for themselves, and I did it too every once in a while. Like this one time, when this dude sat with me and Sally, who was this Chinese hostess, and he and his friend made racist comments all night about her in Japanese, which she thankfully couldn't understand. And afterwards he said to me, here, this is just for you. Don't share it with a chink, okay? I said, thanks, utterly hating him. Sally, I said, that table just gave us a tip. Do you think we should give it to Nakasan? Really, she said? That's surprising. They didn't seem very happy. Let's keep it for ourselves. We deserve it. Those men were so boring. They only wanted to talk in Japanese, but I think they knew how to speak English. Okay, here, take it before Nakasan sees it. Hee hee hee. Many of the hostesses liked to play gambling games with a customer. Nakasan forbade this activity, probably because it meant that none of the money would go in his pocket. But this didn't stop some of the gals, especially the Americans. I usually didn't play these games. I needed the money, sure, but what I really wanted was to learn Japanese and not risk losing my job. But every so often a customer would insist. And the customer's always right, so here he says, if you win, I'll give you $20, but if I win, I get a kiss on the cheek. Which cheek? Huh? I loved this joke, as it would always make the men blush, and as long as I was the one making them blush, I maintained the power in the transaction. Some things I learned at the bar. Number 1, I'm not the only one who gets flushed from drinking alcohol. A third of all people of Japanese, Chinese, and Korean descent have a red-faced reaction to drinking alcohol due to a lack of digestive enzyme. This is something sometimes accompanied by rapid heartbeat and nausea and has been linked to increased risk of esophageal cancer. The red face thing can be offset by taking a Pepsid AC about an hour before you drink. I've since learned, which is a great life hack if you have Asian blood. Things I learned, number 2, other physical traits that I thought were particular to me or not necessarily. What's Mongolian mark? I asked. It's when a baby is born with a blue spot on its bottom. Oh, I had that when I was a girl, but it went away when I was in puberty. Ha 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 ha. Hanma's son had that too. Maybe you're related. Ha 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 ha. I didn't get that joke either. Things I learned, number 3. Japanese bar humor is often based on pointing out people's differences in an unflattering light, i.e., they can be mean. This is our best customer, Teddy-san. Nice to meet you, Teddy. We call him Teddy-san because he's so fat. Hee 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 hee. Other things I learned. Number 4, some people will do anything for a buck. If you give me $20, I'll give you some of my pubic hair. She would do this like every week. And I would often get, what will you do for $20? Things I learned, number 5, life isn't fair. Good night, Naka-san. Wait a moment, Mari. You did good work tonight, so I'll give you more money than I gave to the other girls, okay? What? That's okay. You don't have to. Not all the girls are pretty like you. Pretty girls get more business, so I'll pay you more money. You take it, okay? I'd like to say that I took a stand for sisterhood, but I really needed the money. Thanks, Naka. Don't tell the other girls, okay? Things I learned, number 6. Even the most beautiful people can be insecure. Here we see a before and after of my coworker Sue-Ann, whose beauty mark mysteriously disappeared one day. Where is it? Hey, Sue-Ann, where'd your beauty mark go? I don't want to talk about it. Psst, Mari. Sue-Ann's really upset about it. She was at a photo shoot over the weekend and a supermodel convinced her to get it removed. It was her thing. I thought she loved that mole. I know, she did. The supermodel even went with her and watched her get it done. I don't get it. Why did she cave? I don't know, but she's been inconsolable ever since, so I think you should probably drop it. Things I learned, number 7. Anyone can be vain. Here's Joan singing Killing Me Softly at karaoke. Didn't she sing this song last night? She sang this song 2 hours ago. I cannot listen to that song, you guys. Like, it was like multiple times every day. Anyway, clap, 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 clap. Bow. Nice singing. I know, it's what I do. Ha! Things I learned, number 8. You never know what you're getting. At the bar, we sold small bottles of Japanese water for $2 each. These were meant to mix with whiskey or just to drink. Each table was automatically given and charged 1 bottle per person who was seated at the table. Here's Naka-san saying, I refill the water bottles with water from the sink. Otherwise, it would be wasteful. I don't want to waste, ne? Naka-san, recycling pioneer. Sometimes customers would drink the tap water directly from the bottles, but Naka-san wouldn't take them out of rotation. Oh, wait a moment. Let me get that in a glass for you. It's okay. Nope, he'd just wipe it off with a dirty rag, refill it from the tap, and resell it. So gross. Things I learned, number 9. Sexual harassment by dirty old men is considered hilarious. Here is an older gent lunging at a cheerful hostess's breast area as she prepares his drink. As he goes in for the lunge, she deftly diverts his hand by handing him his beverage, thus politely and humorously sparing herself an unconsensual grope. This tactic, of course, takes a lot of time to learn and depends on a hostess's sense of timing. Things I learned, number 10. Learning Japanese is hard, especially when talking to red-faced businessmen. I don't understand. Can you please talk slower? Things I learned, number 11. I am not cut out for this. Here is a drunk guy leering at my push-up bra. Maybe we can dance later. Hee hee. More beer, Mr. Sato? I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this for a reason. Feeling like a lapsed feminist. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks, guys. Yumi Sakugawa, please come on up. Give it up for Yumi.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me, Yumi.
Ooh. Oh, yeah, anytime. I just want to say, in comparison to your journey and finding your Japanese roots, mine just feels so boring by comparison. Because for me, I was like, well, I'm in college and I'm going to do the Nikkei Student Union and I guess I'll teach English in Japan. I wish I was like cool enough to want to be a bar hostess, but we could talk more about that.
I wish there was a Nikkei, whatever that was that you just said, at my disposal. There was nothing. There was one girl who was Japanese and that went to my school, and we totally avoided each other because, we were the only Japanese girls. Her name was Yoko, which is also my aunt's name and also my idol's name. But yeah, and her parents owned the Japanese restaurant in town. It was so that was it.
Why do you guys think you guys avoided each other?
Because we didn't want to be the only two weirdos, and in the white school. Actually, now that I think about it, there were a couple of other Asian people, but they all were adopted by white people. What does that sound? Oh, sorry. There was a Kwapa guy, a quarter Japanese guy, who was briefly in my 6th grade class, and his name was also Mori, and we also avoided each other, so there was a lot of avoiding going on between the Asians in this very, very white school.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue into the first question I wanted to ask you, actually. I read Turning Japanese. The glowing blurb I wrote on the back is all completely true. I was so excited to read this book before others did and to just really be a part of this journey as a reader. And I think for me, as a second-generation Japanese-American artist and woman, I think what I related to so much was just the feeling of being an outsider in your own culture, both being a part of it and also just sort of feeling separated from it because you're not fully Japanese by something else. So I was wondering what that means to you, sort of being an outsider, whether it's being a Japanese American, being Kappa, being bisexual, and how that relates to the art and stories you make.
I'm also equally a cat and dog person. I'm kind of squarely in the middle of everything. Until we became friends, I didn't realize that I felt like such a special snowflake that, as a mixed race person and one of the very few mixed race people I'd ever met, I thought that was kind of my experience, which was actually made me really afraid of writing this book because I'm like, no one's going to relate to this at all. But then, finding out about, oh yeah, that does make sense. You're kind of out of the Japanese. I feel like in Japan, especially, it's so easy to be an outsider. And I feel like a lot of people, even if they're in, they also feel like outsiders because they just got to always watch themselves.
Oh yeah, totally. I was so depressed when I was in Japan, which led to my nervous breakdown, which led to me discovering meditation. But we could talk about that some other time at my event.
Uh-oh. I'm going to balance here on the spoken tail for a second. Sorry, I got distracted.
We were talking about outsiders, Japan, how people in Japan feel isolated, which I think is completely true.
I think when I was in middle school, like 6th or 7th grade, I felt like I really wanted to fit in, and I think I'd always felt like a big fat nerd and just kind of just wrong. And I couldn't really put my finger on why. I thought it was because I couldn't figure out how to dress fashionably, which was also true. I dressed horribly, and I look at pictures of myself back then, and I'm like, what was I wearing? No wonder everyone hated me. I mean, I don't know if they actually did hate me, but I hated me looking at that picture. Sanrio head to toe. And, which actually I would probably do now. In fact, my purse, my husband is carrying my purse. It's got a giant cat head on it, and it says, "I heart poo," with an H. My mom sent it to me. It's the cutest thing ever.
I never noticed that before. That's amazing.
Isn't it?
Well, we should just all stare at that for the next 10
I
minutes.
heart poo.
Conversation.
I don't know what it means. With an H, but it's not Winnie the Pooh on there. It's a cat. Anyway, sorry, I digress. So by the time I think I hit around 13 or 14 and hit high school, I was like, screw those guys. Why do I want to be like them anyway? And then I kind of reveled in the fact that I was different, and I think I even tried to be even more different, just I was this death rocker girl, and I had just, all black, like punk music and, all that stuff and there weren't a lot of those people, in my school. So I don't know, I just really embraced it. And so I kind of liked the fact that I was the only Asian around, except for when creepy old guys would hit on me and ask me what kind of blood I have, which happened actually on a daily basis for about 3 years, 2.5 years, every single day.
What kind of blood you have?
Yeah.
As in your ancestry or your
presumably
blood type?
I mean, but at first I was like kind of flattered. I'm like, oh, haha, half Japanese. And then it just wears on you. And then I came up with these really snarky, it's red, I mean, I was, a teenager, so I wasn't very good at snarky, snappy comebacks. And then eventually I was just like, screw you, go away. This one time I was arguing with a boyfriend, and it was a really dramatic argument, as things can be at that age. And he was actually crying. I remember that. And that might have been one of the only times I ever saw him cry. And we're in this public area, but away from people. And this guy comes up to me, and he was this older, like 50-something-year-old white guy. And he interrupts us, and I thought he was lost or something. And he's like, excuse me, you're just so beautiful. I have to know. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, do you see what's happening? I mean, I was yelling at my boyfriend who was crying. It was very, I'm not proud of this. But I just started yelling at this guy who was like, oh my God, what's her problem? So that wasn't fun.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, the racial microaggressions that still exist 2 decades later. I definitely, when I go to comic convention cities where there aren't that many Asians, I get a lot of questions about, are you Japanese? And they for some reason, people just love to tell me about their trip to Tokyo, or like even like on podcast interviews. Distinctly, I remember this one guy just being like, oh, so you live in LA, so when's the next Cherry Blossom Festival in Pasadena? And I'm like, I don't know. It would be like if I asked a guy like, oh, when's the next Oktoberfest? Or St. Patrick's Day bar crawl. But speaking of creepy guys talking about your Asian ancestry, I was wondering if, as a bar hostess worker, you sort of got microaggressions about being a bar hostess, since I know there's all these, for me, I feel like there's all these misconceptions about what being a bar hostess is, and whether that's sex work or just ideas people have about that line of work.
I think by the time that I was doing that, I was so tough as nails that it just bounced right off of me, because, this was years after years of just standing out so much and being around so many creepy guys, and also being in the customer service industry, which I think is actually a major part of it, is when you are you're forced to talk to people and be polite to them, they might mistake that for I don't hate you, which they shouldn't. So I think I had some pretty tough walls up, but I definitely did see it happen. Like I saw a lot of the other women that I worked with affected by it. For example, there's this one girl, she was so sweet, and she had this crush on one of the regular clients who was this British guy, one of the few white guys who would come into the restaurant. And she had a huge crush on him, and I think she was trying to flirt with him, and he was like, I don't go for your type of girl, or something like that. It was so like gut-wrenching, because he was clearly making all these assumptions about her, presumptions, and it was like they were not true. Like, she was actually quite wholesome. You know, there definitely were, but you know, I feel like just being a woman who doesn't dress like a nun, and you know, if you're in your early 20s, you get those presumptions already. You know, I like to dress like kind of wild, which I never thought of it as a sexy necessarily way to dress. However, I mean, torn up fishnets and stuff, I thought I looked tough, but like guys thought I was trying to turn them on, which I was not. So I don't know, like there's all sorts of, there's just so many microaggressions and just flat out aggressions coming at me from all over the place that it didn't really affect me. Now that I'm a sensitive artist, I think I wouldn't be able to handle it quite as well. Interestingly, the more longer I do art, the more I become the stereotype.
I'm glad you mentioned stereotypes, because I think also as a Japanese American woman and artist, I almost felt. Wait!
I want to go back to this last question, because when you were in Japan, like I assume that you got a lot of microaggressions at you for, you know, not being Japanese. Like, what was your experience like that? Like, sorry to cut you off.
Oh no, not a problem. I guess for me, I know you mentioned this in your book briefly about almost going to Japanese language school. So for me,
I think I was failing at Japanese language school. Actually,
I was terrible too. But for me, I went to about 8 years of Japanese Saturday school, and it was so intense, where it wasn't just this like hour or 3 hour long program on Saturdays. It was a whole school day, and I had to basically. It was like a school where it wasn't just Japanese language. I was taking literature, math, science, social science in Japanese, and it was really geared towards...
Wait, Japanese math? What's that like?
Being taught math, but in Japanese. So I was like, well, math is my favorite subject, because, you know, I was just not very studious in the Japanese language. So I think even though compared to a lot of my peers, I'm pretty fluent in Japanese. I speak it with my parents. If I go to Japan, I can get by. But compared to my classmates, I always felt that I wasn't Japanese enough. I have this like, you know, chip on my shoulder that my Japanese isn't native sounding. And so when I went to Japan, I think I just like put this. It was both external and internal. I felt self-conscious that even though I look like a Japanese person, I was, you know, just the way I dress, even my body language, certain inflections in the way I talked, it was just very obvious that I wasn't a Japanese person. Towards the end of the year, I want to say, I was starting to pass because my Japanese got a lot better, and I was really happy about that, but that was just such a weird mental space to be in, where it's like, oh, I'm accepted by my parents' culture, instead of defining for myself what it means to be accepted and to be liked. So it was this weird, it's that weird tension I still like struggle with, where on one hand I want to be my own person, but on the other hand I still really want to be accepted in Japanese culture and pass as a full-on Japanese person, even though I'm not.
I love that you use the word pass. What a great word for that. It's funny because the more Japanese I look, or the less Japanese I look, the more accepting they are and by they I mean men in Japanese bars, are of me not speaking fluently. So when I had blonde hair, like no one even believed that I was half Japanese, and so they're like, "Oh, your Japanese is so good." And when I had dark hair, they're like, "Why can't you speak better? Like, what's wrong with you? Why didn't your mom teach you?"
That sounds about right.
Like, what the F?
And as an aside, I've seen photographs of Mari in bleached hair in her 20s, and it's amazing. Like, that should be its own like coffee book, companion book to Turning Japanese.
There is one blonde picture in this book. What were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh yeah. So the question I wanted to ask was, I think as I was reading the book, thank you. I guess on your behalf, I almost felt this anxiety of representing Japanese culture, where and we spoke about this earlier, where it's sort of this anxiety of being a Japanese American person, but also wanting to depict your experiences accurately, but also not wanting to perpetuate stereotypes. So how did you negotiate that tension in making this book?
That was really hard. It was really tricky for me because, I mean, first of all, I can't represent all Happas or all Asian Americans or all girls named Mari who grew up in Marin County. I mean, it's like everyone has a different experience, and I just can't even try. So I just let go of that. But basically, like, just by writing exactly what happened to as truthful as I could be about the experience. I mean, so if someone was kind of a stereotype, then they were kind of a stereotype. But then afterwards, going through and seeing, okay, where does it just seem like it's a stereotype, and it's so much that it doesn't even seem believable, and I ended up chucking a few of those. But I mean, and then I had a friend of mine who's Japanese American. I think he's a second generation, and he went through it. But he deals with a lot of Japanese people. We work together at a video game company, and I had him go through it and culturally edit things, not edit but proofread. And he kind of pointed out times where I got a word wrong, or I got the Chinese word for hello wrong. I mean, just stuff like that. So that was really helpful. I'm sure the internet will point out all the little mistakes and racism type things that I might have not taken out. I so look forward to that. Internet.
I also remember you mentioning that the possibility of bringing the book to Japan was considered, but then you were told that people in Japan wouldn't want to read about a Japanese American person's experience living in Japan.
I mean, yeah, like I still don't understand. Like at first I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I would love to read about someone else's experience in America and just see how I perpetuate like the stereotypes that I might find throughout the book. So I don't know. It's cultural, maybe. It's very not good to be different in Japan. I mean, my mom, who's Japanese, she's from Japan, then she moved to America for a long time and then moved back. Like, I feel like she feels like an outsider too, because she was gone for so long. I mean, but it's not just Japan where that happens. Like, I feel like people in England get that a lot. Like, people who leave and come back, and people are made fun of for their American accents. When I hear them, I'm like, they sound British to me. I don't know. So I don't know. I mean, we all deal with these things, feeling like an outsider, but yeah, some cultures are harsher than others about certain aspects. But I don't know. I haven't actually been exposed to a whole lot of different cultures. Japan's kind of the big one.
I'm glad you brought up moms. That is a common experience we have.
We talk about moms
neurotic
all the time.
Japanese moms. I was wondering if there are certain aspects. This is being
recorded, by the way.
It's okay. My mom doesn't check the internet, so I could get away. Maybe not you. Well, I was wondering if there's anything about having a Japanese mom that influenced who you are as a cartoonist, an artist, a person.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say if it was because she's Japanese or, who she is or whatever. I'm still kind of working out these things by being friends with Yumi, for example, or talking to other Asian Americans in general, not just Japanese, where there's things that, like, my mom does that I always thought were very peculiar and specific to her. And then the more I talk to people, especially Asian Americans, but sometimes other, like, non-Asian Americans, I realize, oh, this is something that other people do. This might be a cultural thing. I'm sorry, I blipped out. Wait, what was the question?
How does having a neurotic Japanese mom shape you as a person and artist?
I mean, it definitely connects me to other Asian American women. Yeah, she's fun though. I think that one thing that I definitely got from my mom, and is kind of my artistic side, or I always thought so. My dad always wanted to be a novelist, and my mom is very good at art. And I actually didn't even know this until I was maybe 14 or 15, and she was trying to describe a piece of a kimono, I think OB or something. Thank you. And she couldn't describe it to me, and so she drew it, like, in a heartbeat, and I still have this drawing.
I want to see this drawing.
It's amazing. And I mean, I'm not a huge fan of, like, the manga style, but she basically just, like, whipped out this perfect manga, like, woman, like, just all dressed up in, like, formal kimono. I mean, and I'm like, Mom, I didn't know you could draw. She's like, oh, I don't know. And I think that's the only thing I ever saw her draw, too. And she's really good at it. So I like to think that, I mean, she's better than I am. My God, like that was just a sketch. I can't sketch at all. I have to, like, sketch and then erase, sketch, erase. It's like I'm sculpting or something. I'm carving, like, a drawing out of a piece of paper with an eraser. That's a really bad analogy.
No, that's amazing. It's like Japanese wood cutting.
Oh, I like how you brought that around.
Well, I think my last question I want to ask you is, the other thing that you do, which I think is awesome, is that you're the founder of the Cartoonists of Color database, and I guess especially with just all the conversations that's happening right now in pop culture with Scarlett Johansson's digital yellow face, all the weird racism towards Asians that happened during the Oscars, and just all the whitewashing that's happening in general. I'm not even sure what my question is, but I guess it's, as an Asian American artist, what responsibilities do you feel in light of just the current pop culture climate with Asian American and minority representation?
Well, when I started writing this and drawing this book, which was actually, I started in 2009 or so, I've been working on this for a very long time. I kind of was trying to downplay the cultural aspect and the Japanesiness of it. I just made up that word. And
I could totally relate to that, because I feel like I went through a phase where I was like, I don't want to be an Asian American artist. I just want to be an artist. And then I sort of finally, for myself, came full circle where they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. I definitely, the more I got into it, and I kind of wish I'd focused on it even a little more than I had, but I don't know. I also don't want to be preachy, so I don't know. I think the book is good. I read it the other day. I'm like, oh, this isn't bad. I finished it like 3 years ago, so I'm like, oh, what if I hate this if I look at it? But it's not bad. I mean, it's great. You should buy it. And
it's great. Don't listen to her. Just read my blurb on the back and buy it.
I don't know. It's weird. Like, so I did feel like I was downplaying it. Now I feel, because of the climate, I don't feel a responsibility, but I think I feel freer to revel in it and to talk about it more openly. And I never used to talk to my white friends, and most of my friends are white, or not just white, but like non-Asian friends, about race, because I would be the only person there who was Asian, and they would kind of look at me. So what do you think, Mari? I'm like, with my glass of wine, I'm like, I don't know. Change the subject quickly. Like, it's not. It's it sucks to be put on the spot like that. And I've only recently started talking to some of these people about it, and seeing misconceptions and blah, blah, blah. Like, I just think I've been told a lot by particularly white friends that they never saw me as Asian, which is fine. Like, we all grew up together, and, it's not something that they thought of, but I'm like, yeah, actually I am. And I think when people say that, they mean that as a, not a compliment, not that Asian's bad, but they mean that as I look beyond race. But I'm like, well, maybe you should look at it for, just a second.
Yeah, I love that gem. I don't see race.
I mean, it's valid when you're a little kid. In fact, when I grew up, I grew up in Marin, but I'm from Texas, and I was from this little town. And, I mean, you notice people's skin color, but, like, it never occurred to me that one thing meant, like, a black person is different than a Mexican person or a white person or Japanese person. Like, I mean, one thing, I was really young, but also the climate there was different. It was a super small town, very, very small town. And, like, the first boy I kissed was black, and it just never occurred to me that he was black until I came to Marin County, which was very, very white, and there were black kids there. There were 2 black kids who were not, like, in my elementary school, who were with the normal people, and they both had white adoptive parents, and the rest of them were in the special ed class, which I thought, are black people different? And that's when I started, like, thinking about race and thinking about myself in terms of, like, I'm different too. It was just a weird thing. And it was like, I moved from Texas to this super liberal town where, like, I look back, I'm like, wow, those people were really racist and gross. But, I mean, unless anyone's from Mill Valley in this room, in which case Mill Valley is really cool. Sorry, Daniel. But you're not white. You saw? It's a weird, toxic environment to grow up in, and I'm like, it was beautiful, but I'm really glad to be gone from there. Anyway, any questions?
Yeah, I guess we can now open the floor to questions from the audience.
Oh, yes.
How did y'all meet?
I remember sort of seeing Mari at Alternative Press Expo a few years ago when she was promoting Kiss and Tell, and I think I've seen the book around, and I was...
That was 5 years ago.
Whoa. I was, like, nervous, so, I didn't say hi to her. But then we just randomly connected on Twitter, so we became Twitter friends.
Did we?
Yeah, we did.
I feel like I saw your stuff. No, because I saw your Friend Love comic. And then...
But I think you saw my other comic on Sadie magazine before Friend Love.
Oh, that wasn't the Friend Love one?
Mm-mm.
Oh, God. For a memoirist, I have a really shitty memory.
The internet records everything, so it, lessens the burden of physical memory. And then we met in person at LA Zine Fest. I want to say in 2012.
I'm really sorry 11. I don't remember this.
It's okay. Well, this was me, like, sort of semi-stalking Mari, so of course I'm going to have the better memory. So then, when I happened to be in San Francisco, I reached out to Mari, and we had, like, shabu together, very Japanese, which all led to this moment.
Yay.
And well, I'm sort of telling this boring story to get to my main point, which I think is hilarious, is that Mari thought, after we had this dinner, random meetup, which she was very nice to do, she thought to herself, well, Yumi, she's kind of too nice, so I don't think we're going to be friends.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd be friends. I'm like...
So I'm really excited that she eventually realized what a terrible person I really am, and so now we're, like, inseparable. So now, and then Mari moved to LA, and now we just, like, hang out all the time.
I didn't expect to move to LA. I mean, I've been here for 3 years now. And like, we hang out.
And LA is better for it because all her friends get free avocados. And now you guys all buy.
And now you all are my friends. Too. Actually, most of you are my friends, so avocados for everyone. Yeah, but when I would just like to say that when she wrote the blurb, we were not as close as we are now, so the blurb is hopefully actually accurate and not blinded by our Japanese.
But I wasn't blinded by avocados in writing this blurb.
Yes, I did not yet have the avocado tree. Anyone else have any questions?
Just out of curiosity, where in Texas did you learn?
It was in the middle of nowhere. Have you heard of it? It was. It was.
Longview, which is the middle of nowhere.
I don't know where that is. Well, I was very young when I moved away. I was 7, turning 8, and it was at the Panhandle. The closest town was Amarillo, and my best friend, when I was in Texas, grew up to be Miss Texas 1994, 97. And actually, someone else I know ended up being like Miss Minnesota or something. Like, I've known a lot of beauty queens. I feel like I would be a very different person now if I'd stayed. And now she goes around the country and does pro-life talks and stuff. But we're very friendly on Facebook. She's pretty. Anyway, oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is about, I guess, like, family. And these stories are always very personal, always about you, but how do you, I guess, how has your family taken you telling stories about yourself? And how do you kind of protect your heart?
I mean, the first book I wrote, or the first book I published, was about my sex life as a teenager. So I kind of got that out of the way with that one. It was very, very awkward for them. So now the fact that I'm not writing about my sex life, I think they're thrilled. But, the other day I emailed my mom, and there's a kind of a story, well, not a story, this happened where she had this kind of traumatic experience, and I emailed her and asked her if I could write about it, because I don't generally want to tell other people's stories. It feels weird, but it really affected me, so that's why I wanted to write about it, and she gave me her blessing, which is great, because I feel like she used to be so private, and I think maybe, I don't know, I like to think that my comics are helping, push her out of that discomfort of being on the, spotlight, but maybe there are other factors, who knows. Yeah, she still hasn't read the first book, by the way, and I hope she never does.
But you all should. It's amazing.
I mean, not everyone should read it. If you're not uncomfortable with teenage sex, you should read it. Or if you want to, anyway. Sorry, talking about sex. Anyone else? Yeah, hey, Sean.
First off, bringing avocados to your own reading is like the most SoCal Japanese American.
Thank you. I feel so accepted by this community.
Second, if you handed this book to San Jose or MariNaomi, what would you want the takeaway to be?
Well, I mean, so the events in the book happened in 1996 to 1997, which was like months after it ends is when I started drawing comics. So I think if I handed it to old me, I'd be like, what? I'm drawing comics? Cool. I don't know. After I lived the experience, when I took the job, as a person who wanted to be a novel writer, I was thinking, oh, maybe I could mine this for a book someday. And when I was in the middle of it, the experience was so excruciating and unpleasant. I mean, the book's not completely unpleasant, but at the time, as a customer service person, I was like, this sucks. Who would want to read about this? I don't want to write about this. I don't want to think about this ever again. And then I didn't until 2009. So it took a while. So it depends on what stage I was in. I don't know. That's a good question, but I don't know. I think, I mean, if I handed it to old me, I think I would just be really, I'm not writing novels? What's this shit? Really? I'm still doing comics? That's weird. It was not supposed to be a career. Anybody else?
I guess I have a question which relates to that. I guess I'm wondering, since you sort of had this long period of time where you didn't necessarily want to revisit and relive all the memories in Turning Japanese, what was it that made you decide, that you were ready to write about it?
God, I don't know what it was. All I know is that one day I started sketching my clothes from the 90s. and sketching my boyfriend at the time too, just making these little color sketches, and I was experimenting with color, and the book's not in color, but like at the time I was playing around with the idea of it being in color. And then it just developed, and the more I did it, and the more the book just started to kind of come to me, like, oh, this is what it's going to be like. I don't know. It stopped sounding boring to me, I guess, just having enough time. But yeah, time really does a lot of great things for getting over things. It's true. Yeah, I don't know. It was like this weird organic process that, I couldn't force it, obviously, because, yeah.
And then I guess my follow-up question is, what are some projects that you would like to share with us, like future projects, upcoming things that you are working on now?
I can't really talk about that. Well, I can. I finished a young adult book a little while ago. And I have another book that's coming out in the fall, which is about a longtime female friendship of mine. This girl used to be my bully. We met when we were in 3rd grade, and now we're like best of friends. And so it was sort of like this. It's only 64 pages. It's not like the length of a graphic novel, but that one I'm excited about. That debuts in September. I don't know. I'm working on like 10 different things right now, but I don't know. I really wanted to do a webcomic and then I started doing it about this like little death rock girl and this little punk rock kid that takes place in the 80s, but now I just don't have time to do it, and I'm like bummed. I got like 2 pages done, and I have like this whole thing mapped out, so maybe in 10 years I'll finish that. It takes a long time to draw these things, like seriously, like Kiss and Tell was like 8 years. Turning Japanese I started in 2009. I mean, ugh. It's like 2 cents an hour. It's like way below poverty level. Oh, yeah.
Since you said there was such a long gap between when the events happened and then when you started writing the book, what was your process for kind of like recreating this memory? Did you have a diary, or did you go back to that place and check it out?
How did I revisit these memories and dig them up out of their ditch? I took so many pictures when I was in Japan, so I don't have a lot of pictures so the first half of the book takes place in San Jose, and the second half of the book takes place in Japan, and so I have tons of photos from the Japan portion of the trip. I lived there for 3 months, so that was really helpful. I did keep some very annoying diaries that are so excruciating to read, because I'm like, I just want the facts. I just want the timeline. What was I doing each day? And I'm just like, I don't think he understands me. So that was completely useless. And actually, in the middle, during the course of this book, I'm with this guy who I called Giuseppe, and several years. No, I must have started it before 2009. I think I really got into. So yeah, it was way before 2009 that I started the book, and by the time, like in 2009, he and I started being friends after a long disconnect. Like we stopped talking to each other in the 90s, and so suddenly we're being friends. And so I'm like, oh hey, I'm actually working on this book that stars you, and luckily he wasn't too mad, but he was like, man, if I'd come across this, like, and we hadn't been talking, I'd be so mad. But we ended up being able to compare notes, and that was really helpful and great for the process. I love it when I could still talk to people about the events. The book that's coming out in September, also with my friend, my long-term friend, like we went back and forth on a lot of things, and I actually showed her every iteration of the book. So like I really like talking to people. Kiss and Tell was like that too. It involved a lot of exes, and there were definitely times where I'd go back to exes that I'd found on Friendster at the time and said, I know. And I'm like, oh, hey, why did we break up again? Like, that was so long ago. And then, like, it would give me such new insight that, like, changed the whole book because, oh, you weren't over your ex. I'm like, oh, wait, that puts, like, everything into perspective that I did after this amount of time. But, like, I was so young that I wasn't aware of that and blah, blah, blah. So, I don't know, it really helps to talk to people. I don't like just making shit up, But, hey, Steph.
Follow up to that. Have you ever found in comparing notes with people that your memories have differed wildly?
All the time. I think my memory is really crappy, so it's good that I've kept a lot of meticulous notes. There's a story in Dragon's Breath and Other True Stories where I hear a gun shot for the first time, and a neighbor comes and kills a snake that ate a bunch of bunnies. And after that comic came out, my mom's like, "Yeah, you're mixing two separate memories." And that wasn't a gun; it was a knife, and the bunnies were another time. And it's funny because my memory is so clear, because especially at the time I'm like, I've never heard or seen a gun before. This is incredible. So I'm like, why am I? I'm like, Mom, I think you're wrong. She's like, I was in my 20s and you were 5. So, and so part of me is like, well, okay, I'm going to be wrong sometimes. And, I just have to, I get to talk about it at these things, and that somehow makes up for the fact that it's totally wrong, probably. Yeah, there's definitely like X's where, I think everyone has their own experience, and they're like, oh wow, that's what you were seeing at the time, and it may or may not be like factually true, but then like they had their own shit going on. Like as I was saying before, in middle school, I thought everyone hated me, and then in high school, I kind of made friends with older people, so I didn't really know the middle school people or the people that I'd grown up with. And when I went to my high school reunion, they were all the people that I went to middle school with. And I kind of realized they didn't hate me. They didn't know I existed. Like, there's this one guy who I remember so vividly. Like, God, he was such a bully. And, like, I was talking about, like, to him at the reunion, and, like, it became really clear that, no, he wasn't. I just was really neurotic as an 11-year-old girl. So, yeah, I don't know. And memory itself is so malleable, and it changes all the time. Every time you tell a story, that, I don't know, what can you do? I just want to tell a good story in the end that's honest as it can be. Like, honest does not necessarily mean accurate sometimes. But, Jessie!
Are there memoirs that you love and memoirs that you hate?
Well, since we're being recorded, I'm gonna say that I don't hate anybody in the history of the universe. Memoirs, I love so much. Honestly, actually, I can't think of anyone that I don't like. I can think of comic book people who make comics who I'm not particularly, that don't really get to me, but like, hate is this very strong word. I kind of am a memoir junkie, and not just in comics, but in like all genres. So even stuff that I could tell isn't very well done, I still enjoy it a little bit, and I just eat it up. But I definitely have favorites. Like, obviously, Alison Bechdel is a great one. I really liked her book, Are You My Mother?, which is pretty much all about writing memoir. That's, like, everyone knows her for Fun Home, but, like, all about, like, Are You My Mother is, like, that just really... Have you read that one?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
I did.
Okay. Did you like it more than Fun Home or less?
I guess when I first read it, I sort of had this reaction that I didn't like it because it was so unexpected, but it definitely grew onto me like wine. Like, I feel like now I like her second book more.
I felt that way about Fun Home, where I'm like, this is too easily accessible when I first read it, but then every time I read it again, I'm like, this is really good. And like, it grew on me like a very good song. Carol Tyler, I think, is one of my favorite of all time cartoonist comics memoirist. Like her, I think she's up for an Eisner for the reprint of her trilogy. I think it's called You'll Never Know. It's about her father, and it's so freaking good. It's really good. You should read it. I believe you've read it, probably. But like, my favorite memoirist is Cheryl Strayed, when she wrote her Tiny Beautiful Things, her Dear Sugar advice column. Like, that's just hands down. But I don't know. I love it all. It's all very good. Yumi once did a sort of memoir, a diary of her trip to Paris, right?
Mm-hmm. Paris and Rome, yeah.
It was so good, and I really wish she would make more. But she doesn't like making memoirs, so Not very happy.
Oh, it's not that I don't like making it. I guess for me, so Mari is talking about this mini comic I made. It was a travel diary comic about my travels to Paris and Rome in 2012, and I really loved making it, but I think it just took a lot out of me, just like retracing, because I actually did take very meticulous sketch diaries. I took a lot of photos, and when I was making them, I referenced a lot of the architecture that I saw in Paris and Rome, and I think it was just so mentally exhausting. I'm intimidated to do it again, but I don't want to cancel it out completely. I do have this secret comic essay in the works, so I do mostly fiction, but I do still I have a few secret projects up my sleeve.
I feel like you did something for Bitch magazine recently that was memoir-y, which I liked.
Thank you.
Was it Bitch?
Yeah, it was for Bitch.
Yeah, I love those guys. But yeah, there's one moment in your in the diary comic. Well, two moments. One where you drank too much wine, and another moment where you were kind of having this trippy experience and kind of meditating in, I think it was Rome.
I was in Rome.
And that, like, I never got meditation until I read that, like, those two panels. I'm like, oh, I get it.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I still don't do it, but I got it, which is like a huge first step. I'm a little too neurotic to meditate, I think.
But that's why you should meditate.
I know, right? Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, yeah.
Since you saw yourself writing novels, what drew you to comics?
What drew me to comics? Well, yeah, I always wanted to be a novelist, but I always drew. And like in the memoir, it never really occurred to me because I'd never seen anything that wasn't a celebrity memoir until the 90s when I saw like autobio comic, like underground comics for the first time, and I don't know, that was so great. And then there's this one that I could tell you the exact comic that just switched in my head. It was Mary Fleener's comic, The Jelly, in Twisted Sisters, a collection of bad girl art. It was an anthology, and it was so funny, and it was so, like, there were so many great things about it. It was so beautiful, and I'm not, and I wasn't, especially then, a very good artist, but I was like, hey, I could do this. I have stories like this. And so it was just this sort of, like, fun hobby that I did, and but, like, I'm also into painting and all sorts of other things. Like, I would love to do more filmmaking, and I don't mean that in the Hollywood way. I mean, like, by myself and alone in a room with nobody else, like, getting their fingers in my shit. Like, I've made a couple short storytelling animation things that, like, so that's really fun. Like, and I still want to do all these other things. I did not expect comics to become this thing or to ever have when I was dreaming as high as I could with comics, I thought maybe one day, like, I could have, like, a serial, like, floppy comic, which they don't, I guess they still do that, but I don't really pay attention anymore. But, like, it just never occurred to me that I would have books, like, or really write about my life. Like, I don't know. It's pretty weird how things happen. Yeah. Well, I think that's all the time we have, probably. Are we? Sure. Or if anyone else has a question, or we can just start handing out avocados and signing books if anyone wants us to do that. Yeah, okay. So for a note about the avocados, one of the bags is full of ones that fell off the tree, so they're a little damaged. They might have little squirrel bites in them, and they're ripening or ripe, or maybe a little beyond. Like, I can't vouch for them. The other bag is full of avocados that I personally, by myself, went on a really tall ladder to get today and risked my life for you guys. But they're not ripe yet, and you'll need to either have them sitting around for like a week, or you can take one of the bags that I brought cut and maybe put an apple in there, and it'll ripen in like a day or two. And they are the best avocados I've ever had. I didn't like avocados before I met this tree. They have this like weird smoky flavor to them. They're really good.
They're really, really good. I could vouch for them. I already went through like 2 shopping bags full of them, and I'm still like not sick of them. So.
It was crazy. There were like 55 avocados that fell off my tree one day, like last week. I mean, now it's slowed down, or else I would have brought more. But please take a few. That's all.
Yay for Mari.
Thank you. Yay for Yumi. Thanks for coming.
The reading series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.